Smith's an undergraduate here in the Information Studies Department. He also is interning at Burst Marketing, where Dan and I both work. He's an excellent programmer and a really smart guy. And he's going to be talking about Red Hat's OpenShift platform. So take it away, Nick.
There we go. Today I'm going to be talking about OpenShift, which is Red Hat's solution to an open source development environment. My name is Nick Smith. Like Chris said, I'm a developer at Burst Marketing, an open source enthusiast, Emacs evangelist, and GitHub pusher. Just also an undergrad in the College of Computing Information, and also an undergraduate in the music department as well. We're going to talk about the roadmap. We're going to first describe the problem that OpenShift resolves. We're going to talk about how OpenShift fits into the open source community, what it is exactly, what is a pass. I'll talk about that for an extended period of time. How is OpenShift a pass? How does it work? How do we deploy it? And we'll give some examples which will provide a lot of clarity on what OpenShift does. So first off, we're going to start with a basic problem. We have to set up a web server. First off, we need the actual hardware. We need disk space, we need a space connected to the internet, we need an internet connection, we need RAM, we need all of this. So that's our first problem. That's, at least, like we just heard, we could use a Raspberry Pi to do that, but we still need internet connection, power, sustainability. How's that all going to work? That's the first problem. Next, we need an operating system on that. I'm not sure how many of you have set up a web server before, but this is an extended process. Put the operating system on, then we need to install Apache. Apache is what makes the actual operating system be able to go out into the internet and function as a web server. Next, we need to configure a database, possibly. How big is our application going to be? Do we need to include a database? Do we not need to include a database? How do we configure the database to work appropriately with the operating system? Then we need virtual environments if we're going to use a dynamic language like Perl or Python or sometimes PHP, but that's if the case. And we need to be able to understand how those work and be able to set them up sustainably across platform. And next, what about scaling? What if we build our application and we only have 10 users and our application works great? What if all of a sudden we want to build that up so we were able to sustain 100,000 users or 1 million users? What do we need to do then? We need to restart this whole process again and get a whole new server, maybe put the database on that server, have the two servers talk to each other so that the website will be able to pull files from different servers. And as you can see, this is becoming a big problem. And this is just one problem there's another problem. That's just one problem that OpenShift manages to address. Last problem is the URL and setting up domain names. That's not a big deal, but that still can be a problem, especially if we're trying to build a development environment where we have subdomains and we're trying to fix things on a server that's out there, and we'll get into more on that in a little bit. This is an overview of OpenShift, and just as a precursor, all images in the slideshow are from the OpenShift website itself. OpenShift, we're going to just go straight up in here. We're going to start at the bottom with Red Hat Storage. That is the physical server and the hardware that is a fundamental part of OpenShift in Red Hat. Next is the secure OS. OpenShift takes care of the runtimes, the libraries, the security, and the multi-tenancy. Everyone is on one single OS. It's kind of like a shared garden space. Everyone is in the same garden in and of itself, but they all have individual plots. So they're all sharing the same resources. They all share water and tools, but they all have their own individual spot within that garden. That's about as far as that analogy goes. I won't go too far into it. Also, OpenShift includes middleware as an extensible tool. Also, dev tools like Git, which is I haven't really delved too much into the other ones, but Git is the main one I use in this system. Also included is an extensive community and many partners who encourage and develop beyond that. And lastly, it also runs most languages that run on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, including binary packages that will run as a web application, will run on OpenShift. Talking about scaling, OpenShift automatically scales your application as your needs change. So if you have 10 users one day and all of a sudden your application starts blowing up, all of a sudden, word has gotten out, and you need 100,000 user, the ability to have 100,000 100,000 users. OpenShift automatically works through that. And just lastly, the platform itself will power your app completely based on cartridges. Cartridges are how it runs. So you can have a PHP cartridge hooked up to a MySQL cartridge, hooked up to a JBoss cartridge, and that works completely fine. So that is the problem, and that's how OpenShift fits the problem. If you don't completely understand that, when I do my example, it'll become very clear how OpenShift can be used extensively to fill that problem. How does open source? You have entire access to its design and implementation, all via GitHub. All of the code is out there for you to use and reuse, and even to freely put back onto your own system. If you have a Red Hat Enterprise Linux distribution installed, you can, actually I'm not sure, you might be able to put that on any Linux distribution. You can download the source code from GitHub, and you can set up your own OpenShift space on your own server, so you can use all of their code, all of their implementation across the board in all of their system. And that is how OpenShift is open source. Sorry if I mix up those two words, that might become a problem. OpenShift, open source. Just as an overview, just to cover what I've already said, OpenShift is an application platform in the cloud where application developers and teams can build, test, deploy, and run their applications. This will become increasingly more clear as we go on. OpenShift is Red Hat's cloud computing platform as a service offering. We're going to really dive into this PaaS idea now, the platform as a service. And fortunately, I have notes, but it'll take me a moment to break them up. So what is a PaaS? Sorry, just bear with me for a second. Just take a second. A PaaS is something that will sit in between, something that sits in between your app and in between the cloud. Layered in here is SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. It's not last, that's an I at the end. So at the bottom we have infrastructure as a service. This is normally what the Google App Engine or Amazon's, what's it called, Beanstalk, I believe, AE2. Those are infrastructure as a service. What they use is they use the computing, the system processes that go on to power your code and power your application. They aren't really too concerned about security. That's mainly handled by you. You have to take care of that. And that can be a serious problem for some people. SaaS is what you have on your phones. Those are software as a service. Those you hit in. Those are all cloud applications because you're using it from your phone. It is a cloud application that talks to a database somewhere. And people develop those, but that is not what a PaaS is about. Now, a PaaS basically stands in between, like this last slide shows, in between your SaaS, your software as a service, and your infrastructure, the cloud. And what it does is it will use the services and computing power of the infrastructure to power the SaaS. So as we go through this, you can kind of think of the infrastructure as a service, the cloud as the operating system, this physical server. Think of the platform as a service, as a developer's code, and you can think of SaaS as the user's interface. Sign up, it's free. That's just a little throw in there. It is completely free. Sign up, all it requires is a valid email address. For verification, they send you a little blurb, and everybody's done this. You know how to sign up. So I'm going to talk about how do you install OpenShift. OpenShift uses a gem, which is part of the Ruby library. It's called RHC. So you just open up your terminal, sudo gem install RHC. The command for Windows is slightly different, but that's your problem. Gem update RHC, just another gem command. It's all based on Ruby. And then RHC setup, and bam. You now have a domain space that you can utilize within OpenShift to power your apps. So how does the magic happen? First, you edit your files in an IDE, whatever you're using, Java, NetBeans, Emacs, Text Wrangler, and then you use Git to push that code. We saw from the diagram that there are a few other tools to be able to push your code out onto the web server on OpenShift. And you are able to SSH into your application as well whenever you want. But that is the main form. Just as a side note, Git is a version control system if you've never used it before. So we know what OpenShift is, we know where in the development system it sits, and we know how to set it up. But what are we going to do? And now we are going to do some examples. This will be the bulk of the presentation, semi-unfortunately. First off, I'm going to do a WordPress install from the GUI, from OpenShift's GUI, and then I'll be doing a Flask install of Dan Lamana's website, actually. I will be going into that. So OpenShift, just going to zoom out here. This is the main website. I'm going to sign in. I'm already signed in. Fantastic. So this is the blank slate, and this is just kind of the web GUI where you can just click through and browse. These are some of the things I'm just going to kind of scroll through here. We have JBoss, Send Server, and here's some of the instant apps over here on the left: WordPress, Drupal, Jenkins, and then they have Java implementations. Java, they have PHP applications, Python, Ruby, and then at the very bottom is a do-it-yourself, where you can take any language that will run on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and I believe any Linux distribution, push right out, including, interestingly, a Django one right there. All you do is just press that button, enter the username and the URL you want, and you have a full-functioning Django application running in the cloud that you don't have to set up yourself with all that stuff. So I'm just going to do a basic WordPress install. Just going to click. I'm going to enter a name, just a quick start here, like OpenShift, Open Source, Festival, all. Thank you. Sorry, no problem. And then I'm going to create the application down at the bottom. This will take a few seconds. What it's going to do is it's going to create a namespace on their server for me at this URL, OpenSpace Festival, Albany. The source code, they're pulling it from this URL, from this GitHub repo. You can take a peek. We'll get into that later. And it's using these cartridges. It's using the PHP 5.3 language built into the back end of MySQL database. It's still creating that. It's setting up an entire Apache server, all the SSH credentials as well, including the DNS. It's providing that for us as well. So that's going to take a few minutes, apparently. Are there any questions while we're waiting? Big crowd, so there might be a lot of questions, I figure. All right, oh, we're good. Sweet. All right, so here's all the database information provided right there. You're free to, take a screenshot right now and go and edit it later. Here's the actual URL, and there's a WordPress P. I'm just going to show you that it is actually there. Some contact information. I'm sure all of you have installed WordPress before. Maybe not. Okay, that's awesome. And do this. And there we go. There's a basic WordPress site that I installed in, I think, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. And so now you can go in there, and the purpose of this is now you can go in and edit WordPress to your heart's content in a complete, safe development environment, using Git to be able to revert back to previous code that you might have done and edit. Now to the real cherry on the top is I'm going to use the command line to install Dan Lamana's website, his Flask website here, into my own development space. And this is going to be a lot of bearing with me time, so just bear with me. First off, I'm going to go into the command line and create a new application. I'm going to name it Dan is, do we have an adjective? Dan? Awesome. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to use the Python 2.6 library. I'm a nervous coder, so I'm shaking up here a lot, so I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. And so now it's creating the application, it's creating a namespace on their server, and then it's going to create the DNS, and then it's going to ask me to upload my SSH key to be able to SSH into the server when I do a git push. So that's going to take a few minutes. I'm not really 100% sure of the history of this. I know they had bought out another company and then had kept it in-house for a little while and then had ported it out into the open source community. It does have a little history. I believe that the whole system is about 5 years old. This is the most modern update of it. All right, so now the application is created. We have the Git URL where I can push stuff to. We have the SSH command right there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cd right into the directory and just look at it. Just look at it. So I'm going to go into the whiskey. This is just where the code is held. I'll just do another, we'll show you where everything is. And right now all we have is a very static application. Very static. I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to show you, I already showed you Dan's website, so that's what we're going to go to. So this is the website right now. So first off, I'm going to take Dan's code down here at the bottom for this site. And I'm going to clone it into the directory. Do some fancy stuff real quick. And I'm going to move all of Dan's code that is in .com into my current directory. And now I have all of his code in my directory. I do need to do a little bit more to set up the virtual environment, which is just part of, oh god, shit. So I'm just going to pull how they have their development environment set up. So right now I'm setting it up so when the server reads this, it'll be able to read the development environment as it's supposed to be, the virtual environment. And then right now I'm editing the name of Dan's application, which is application, and his code inside of his application file is appropriately named application. Lastly, there's something else we have to do. We have to change how setup is run when we upload to OpenShift. Now by default, it automatically assumes that you want to install a Django application. We're going to change that to a Flask application. We're going to use the current version, which is 0.9. And Dan fancifully uses a couple other libraries, unfortunately. So we have to include those when we do the install. We're just going to pull up his code real quick, because I've mistyped this 15 times already. All right, so first off, he uses Flask, flat pages, and then he also uses Markdown. I did do this 3 times, and almost every time I've forgotten to include these libraries, and it completely screws up everything. So there's that. Lastly, we're going to do a git push, because still I've edited all the files, but our URL is still no good. It's still running as just that blank static page we saw the first time. These are just basic git commands. That's something that can be added later. And then we're going to do a git push. And then this is where some interesting stuff happens. We can see the OpenShift server being talked to. We can see the Apache part of it running, waiting for stop to finish. It's running through the setup file I just added. It's seeing that I've included some libraries that weren't there before. Now it sees that there's Markdown, so it's looking for Markdown. And it's going to add that library into our Python development, Python site packages, rather. Sorry. Once that's installed, it's going to look for Flask flat pages, which it found. Maybe not. Yes, it did, I think. And then it's going through the whole Flask. And that's going to require a couple extra libraries, but it's nothing too hard. So it's just still building through. This is all part of the backend that we no longer have to worry about, making sure that we have all the packages in the right spot, making sure that all the development is done correctly. Now it's just restarting the Apache server. This is what makes OpenShift so great, is that we can install any application and run this command and it automatically syncs up inside. So our URL is danisawesome. danisawesome -cloud.com, and it's there. Sweet. So great. I emulated Dan's website. What does that mean? Now I have what that means is now I have an entire development environment for Dan's website. So say Dan wants to include a brand new library into this, and he wants to maybe include an entire backend or an admin page or something. Now what Dan can do is take this website and say, all right, I have my live version, which I don't want to screw up, and that's on a server that I'm paying for. You know, I pay for each upload I do, I pay for each download, I pay for how much bandwidth I use. So instead, what I'll do is I'll take the code, put it into a free development environment that scales automatically, will run without me having to set it up and worry about all the A names and all that stuff. And I can add library after library after library to this and test it beyond belief. And that is what the beauty of OpenShift is that it takes away a lot of the server administration and server headaches and allows you to quickly push and edit your application. Back to our slide, our amazing slideshow, I should say. Oh, we've done a couple examples, and now time for questions. Any questions? So many people to ask questions. Go ahead. No one else had it.
Oh, you can throw that. So anytime I push on with Git, then it just updates the actual.
Yeah, it'll run that whole thing again.
Okay. So if I have a clone version of a live website I'm pushing, like, I guess I'm trying to understand how to actually manage the how do you actually manage the sort of the Git repository for the live site and the Git stuff for
You automatically built in is
branches or like
yeah,
it just releases your master branch. Like how do you tweak that?
That's a good question. I believe it just does the master branch. But there's you can add, if I understand your question right, you can add hooks which will automatically you can push to 2 repositories at the same time if you wanted to. If that was part of your question, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, you could read the documentation.
Yeah.
You had a question about Django, being able to use that in the development environment. And as we saw in OpenShift here, all it is just a single install. You log in, you create an account, add application. Another thing to note is that all of this is available right here for me to go in and edit. I can go in and say, oh, I forgot the SSH key for my, Open Source Festival Albany, and I can go in and get the SSH key. Don't know why this is taking so long, but you just go down here and say I want a Django, and bam, you can get a Django application running completely. And then you git pull and you can pull the code down. What do you want?
Do it.
Do it?
Yeah.
Do it.
I want to see.
You want to see?
How much time do you have?
A lot of time. I don't actually. I'm actually right where I'm supposed to be, aren't I? All right, so it's creating. Oh, we're gonna use 2. We're gonna use 2.6.
Yeah, can I get 3.3 or what?
What?
Can I get 3.3?
Oh my gosh, it's already created it. Too late.
Can I get 2.7? 2.7.3? What the hell?
Why are you doing this to me?
Just give me a hard time.
But yeah, you can use a different library if you wanted to. The 2.7, just to note, 2.7 and 3.3 are actually community-based. Community funded. They only created 2.6 like that project. Not that anyone is really going to care about that. It is interesting nonetheless. Any other questions? Just what I was going to finish up saying is that with creating this using the GUI, what you do is then you pull all of your code down into a local repository and you can push it out again. And of course, if you did want to edit it on the site, you can use SSH to just get in there and do stuff.
So you get 3 applications free?
3 applications free.
So what's the pricing model like?
The pricing model is extensive. They do have, I don't actually know the pricing model because it has never been a worry for me. Pricing. That'd be something for us to look up later.
Well, I have to. What's confusing to me, and it's said
Go
a lot
ahead.
of people left is like this seems like the perfect thing to use in class.
Exactly.
So I know that they just set up in the information studies department. They just set up a thing with they have a grant now, so you can set up the US servers through Amazon. That's going to require. Now, I mean, part of what's good about that is learning how to install the operating systems on your own server.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you want to be able to sort of teach people how to do application development, server-side application development. It seems like this, assuming that you have Git under your belt, allows you to do that in a way that.
Beyond the 3 Git commands that I just showed, that you don't need to know anything else for Git. Going back to the previous presentation even, this is the perfect thing for that, because this is just create the application and you don't have to worry about any of that. And then if you are curious, you can pull all of your code out, edit your virtual environment, however that goes, and it will run on an Apache server that you use there. I actually just did this. I have 2 sites going where I've created an entire development environment using a different account for a website, and then the client sees a static website that I'm editing through the development environment. That was a real pain though, because the virtual environments are all different. It is part of the curiosity.
That's a good question. So can I actually deploy a real application on this? Like, so that I'm not in a,
OpenShift, like.
OpenShift, Futon, Red Hat,
You can change. There are ways to set up the DNS to do that. I'm not incredibly familiar with that. I mean, you can of course just reroute, but that's not really fun. It is a little bit of work to pull it out of the environment, but once you've done it once or twice, it's very easy. So that's all I have. If there's no other questions, that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. All.